Hello everyone. Today we embark on a journey through the heart of the Roman Empire, the power that transformed the Mediterranean into its private lake, built walls and roads, and seemed destined to dominate the entire world. But there exists a land, cold, misty, and mountainous, that became the greatest nightmare of Rome's legions, Caledonia, the territory we know today as Scotland. Behind the glorious victories and golden brilliance of the Eternal City, there were also bitter defeats, and Caledonia was proof that not even the most powerful empire of antiquity could conquer everything. So, before settling in, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, the best history channel on YouTube. Tell us in the comments, do you think you'd survive a Pictish ambush in Scotland's dark forests? Now turn off the lights, settle in your chair, and let's discover together how Rome found its limits before a people who never surrendered. You wake to the sound of rain beating on your wooden and straw shelter. It's not a refreshing spring tinkle, as Roman poets would say. It's a merciless liquid bombardment that hasn't given respite for 3 consecutive days. Welcome to 2nd century AD Caledonia, where the concept of sunny is as rare as an honest politician. You stretch your arms and feel every muscle protest like a teenager being woken for school. Your bed is basically a pile of animal skins over dry straw, no spring mattresses or feather pillows, and yet you slept like a stone. Working 14 hours a day trying to survive has that effect. Your hut's floor is packed earth, more or less like that makeshift parking lot at the music festival you went to last summer, only with fewer disposable cups and more beetles. The humidity is constant, and you've grown accustomed to living with that perpetual smell of wet earth and smoke. Your room has no door. A piece of deer hide hung by cords separates your sleeping space from the common area. Privacy here is as abstract a concept as broadband internet. The entire hut is roughly the size of an airport bathroom, but houses your whole family. Minimalism isn't an aesthetic choice, it's the only option. You push aside the leather curtain and see your family already in motion. There's no luxury of hitting the snooze button when you live in the Iron Age. The sun has barely begun to appear behind the mountains, and everyone already has tasks to fulfill. It's like an eternal scout camp, only without supervising adults, and with much higher chances of dying from pneumonia. At the center of the hut, a small fire struggles to stay lit. The smoke rises lazily until it finds an opening in the straw roof, at least in theory. In practice, part of it remains inside, making your eyes burn as if you just watched a particularly bad romantic movie. The walls are made of wood, mud, and stone, built in circular format. Cutting-edge engineering for the era, and surprisingly effective against the cutting wind that comes from the mountains. You look up and see the wooden beams supporting the conical roof, darkened by years of smoke, like a modern hipster restaurant, trying to look rustic, only authentic. Through a small opening in the walls that serves as a window, glass, that's rich Roman stuff, you can see the settlement awakening. Other circular huts identical to yours dot the hillside, with threads of smoke rising from each one. It's the Pictish equivalent to online status. If there's smoke, someone's home. You live in a dun, a fortified settlement strategically built atop a hill. It's less gated community with 24-hour security, and more altogether because if the enemy comes, at least we see them coming. The view, you have to admit, is spectacular. Green valleys, dense forests, and in the distance, bluish mountains covered in mist. There's no time to admire the landscape, however. Your stomach rumbles like an angry bear, reminding you that the first mission of the day is the same as always. Find enough food to keep your body functioning in this environment that seems determined to turn you into a picked cycle. You approach the center of the hut, where your mother stirs an iron cauldron hanging over the fire. It's not an induction stove with timer and temperature control. It's literally a hole with fire and a container on top. Gordon Ramsay would have an attack, but it's worked for the last few thousand years. Breakfast is served and no, there's no coffee, no tea, no sugar, no lactose-free almond milk. What you have is a wooden bowl full of oat porridge. It looks like wet cement and tastes about the same. But hey, it's high in fiber and will keep you functioning during hours of intense physical work. Oats are Caledonia's superfood, long before fitness influencers discovered acai. Cultivated in the lowlands, it's one of the few grains that can survive the unpredictable climate. You eat your portion resignedly, mentally thanking that you weren't born a few centuries earlier, when the morning menu would be even more primitive. To accompany it, You have a wooden mug with water. Surprising, I know. Occasionally it might be weak beer, made from fermented barley. It's technically alcohol, but so diluted you'd need to drink an entire barrel to feel anything besides a slight urge to pee. Not that this stops some warriors from trying. Your mother throws some herbs into the porridge, wild thyme and a bit of watercress gathered near the stream. It's not exactly a detox smoothie, but it has vitamins and adds a slight flavor to what would otherwise be indistinguishable from wet cardboard. Modern nutritionists would approve of the absence of additives and preservatives. Occasionally, on special days, you might have a piece of flattened barley bread baked on hot stones around the fire. It's the Pictish equivalent to Sunday pancakes, only without maple syrup, butter, berries, or, well, anything that makes them remotely tasty. If hunting was good recently, there might be a piece of dried venison or wild boar meat you chew with determination, exercising your jaw muscles as if you were in a jaw gym. Protein is precious and helps build those muscles needed to, not die at Roman hands. Food is shared in silence. Not because of some deep cultural rule, but because it's hard to have stimulating table conversations when everyone's focused on chewing something with the consistency of boot leather. Besides, you'll spend the entire day together. There's no need to ask how was your day, yet you notice your father has already left to check the trap set the night before. With luck, there'll be a rabbit or some partridges for dinner. The Pictish diet is surprisingly varied when you're not starving. River fish, seafood from the coast, game meat, nuts, wild fruits, cultivated vegetables. It's practically a Paleolithic diet, which makes sense since you've barely left the Iron Age. The last gulp of water from your mug has a slightly earthy taste. There's no water treatment here. Just trust that the mountain stream is clean enough. Spoiler, usually it is. Caledonian water is so pure, it would make modern bottled water companies cry with envy when it's not carrying some enthusiastic intestinal parasite eager to meet your digestive system. You finish your meal quickly. There are no dishes to wash. You simply scrape the last bits of porridge with your fingers and lick the bowl. Zero waste. Totally ecological. 21st century hipsters would pay fortunes for this authentic gastronomic experience. But you're just thinking about the next meal, which isn't guaranteed. Time to dress for the day. Forget that routine of spending 20 minutes contemplating a closet full of clothes while thinking, I have nothing to wear. Your wardrobe consists of exactly two options: the clothes you're wearing and the others that are drying, or more frequently in Caledonia, trying to dry, near the fire. Pictish fashion starts with a simple tunic made of rough linen or wool. Imagine taking your dish sponge, enlarging it to t-shirt size and wearing it. That's roughly the feeling. The wool is produced locally, sheared from sheep grazing on the hills, and woven on vertical looms by the tribe's women during the long winter months. Underneath, you wear a kind of breeches or underwear that reaches to your knees. No, there are no boxer shorts with fun prints or lace panties. Underwear is a relatively modern concept. You're essentially in direct contact with your outer garments, making that rough wool itch an even more intimate experience. Over the tunic goes a rectangular cloak, fastened at the shoulder with a bronze or iron brooch. It's the Pictish equivalent of a coat, only less efficient against rain, wind, cold, or any natural element. But hey, you can adjust it for different styles, like an Iron Age fashion influencer. The colors of your clothes are surprisingly vibrant. The Picts mastered the art of dyeing fabrics using local plants: heather for purple, lichens for red, walnut for brown. No basic black or versatile gray here. You walk around looking like a walking music festival with geometric patterns, woven at the edges to show your tribal status. Your shoes are basically leather bags tied to your feet. There's no rubber sole, arch support, or cushioning technology. They're literally pieces of deer or cow leather molded around the foot and tied with straps. After a week of use, they mold perfectly to your feet. A primitive version of custom sneakers. The finishing touch of your look is, without doubt, the most iconic body paint. The Romans didn't call you Picti, the painted ones, for nothing. Using paints made from clay, charcoal, and plants, you and your companions cover parts of the body with intricate symbols, spirals, stylized animals, geometric lines. It's part intimidation, part cultural identity, part spiritual protection. For special occasions like wars or ceremonies, you use woad paste, dyer's woad, which leaves the skin dark blue. Imagine the scene. naked or half-naked warriors, with bodies covered in blue symbols, emerging from forest mist. It's basically like Blue Man Group members deciding to become MMA fighters. Some more prominent tribe members have permanent tattoos, made with bone needles and soot. They're painful, time-consuming, and show commitment. It's the Pictish equivalent of tattooing your girlfriend's name on your arm, only with deep tribal meanings instead of future regrets. Hair is another form of expression. Long and often treated with lime, which makes it stiff and bleached, a look that punk bands of the 20th century would try to recreate millennia later. Some warriors make their hair stand up like spikes, creating a more intimidating silhouette. It's like wearing a war helmet, only made from your own hair. Jewelry is simple but significant. Bronze bracelets, amber necklaces, colored glass beads obtained through trade. Some are status symbols, others have spiritual meaning. The Picts don't have Instagram to show off their accessories, but everyone in the tribe recognizes the value and meaning of each piece. You finish dressing and feel prepared to face the day. Your work clothes wouldn't pass any modern safety code, but are surprisingly practical for the environment. Breathable when hot, relatively warm when wet, durable for heavy work, and with easily replaceable parts when torn. You don't have a mirror, but can see your distorted reflection in a water cauldron. It's not exactly an Instagram-worthy selfie, but serves to ensure your face paint is in the right place. After all, even in ancient Caledonia, nobody wants to leave home with their face smeared incorrectly. Like every young person in your tribe, you've been trained since childhood for combat. Not because the Picts were particularly warlike, but because when you live on the frontier of an expansionist empire with genocidal tendencies, knowing how to stick a spear in someone becomes a basic survival skill. Your personal arsenal doesn't include tanks or attack drones. You have an iron-tipped spear, a wooden shield covered with oxhide, and maybe a short sword if your family has resources. Iron is valuable. Each weapon is a significant investment. It's equivalent to buying a car today, except this car is used to pierce Roman intestines. But the Picts' real weapon, the terrain. Caledonia is a logistical nightmare. Steep mountains, dense forests, treacherous swamps, rivers that suddenly overflow. For Romans, accustomed to marching on paved roads, it's like asking a Wall Street executive to hike in the Amazon wearing dress shoes. Your tribe masters guerrilla warfare long before the term was invented. Attack quickly, and then disappear into the forest is your specialty. It's like playing paintball at professional level. Only the stains are real blood and there's no safe zone for rest. Romans call this cowardice. You call it not being stupid enough to face the world's greatest military machine in open field. The preferred tactic is ambush. You and your companions know every hill, every valley, every narrow passage where a legion can be trapped. Romans, on the other hand, depend on inaccurate maps drawn by explorers who rarely return alive. It's like you have Google Maps, and they're using a napkin scribbled by a 5-year-old. Battles are never fair, and that's exactly the point. You attack during storms, in the middle of the night, on swampy terrain where heavy Roman armor becomes death traps. A legionnaire carries about 30 kilograms of equipment. Imagine trying to run in a swamp carrying a 5-year-old child on your back. Communication during attacks is done with ram horns and specific shouts that echo through the mountains. To Romans, it sounds like chaotic noise. To you, it's a sophisticated system that coordinates complex movements. It's Iron Age Bluetooth. Not very reliable in heavy rain, but usually works. Romans are trained to fight in formation, shoulder to shoulder, like a well-oiled machine. Take them out of that formation and they become vulnerable. It's like dismantling a Swiss watch and expecting the individual parts to still tell time. You attack the flanks, separate small groups, cut supply lines, strategies Sun Tzu would approve. Your training began at 7, not in a formal military academy, but following older warriors, learning to move silently through the forest. 2. Track animals, a skill that transfers perfectly to tracking Romans, to survive with minimal resources. It's like being a scout, only the merit badge is eviscerating foreign invaders. Interestingly, women also participate in defense. While Romans keep their women away from battlefields, Pictish women can fight alongside men when necessary. Some of the fiercest warriors in your tribe are women. Imagine a Roman legionnaire's surprise discovering that the barbarian who just pierced his abdomen with a spear is actually a barbarian woman. Romans have catapults, ballistae, and other impressive war machines. You have improvised fireballs and the ability to set virtually anything on fire. It's not very sophisticated, but when you throw a dozen flaming projectiles at a Roman camp in the middle of the night, sophistication is the least of their problems. Your knowledge of local plants is also a weapon. Arrows poisoned with toxins, extracted from plants, aren't technically prohibited by the Geneva Convention when it doesn't exist yet. Romans often die not from the initial wound, but from subsequent infection. It's biologically questionable, but effective. The Picts' reputation as savage warriors is partially manufactured by yourselves. The screams, body paintings, decapitated heads displayed on stakes at the forest border. All this is psychological. Warfare. It's terror marketing. When Romans make camp at night, every whisper of wind among the trees becomes a potential Pictish attack. Ultimately, your tribe's strategy isn't to defeat Rome in open battle. That would be suicide. It's to make occupation so costly, so bloody, so frustrating, that eventually they decide that piece of rainy, mountainous land isn't worth the effort. And surprisingly, it works. Caledonia remains as the only territory in Britain that the Romans tried to conquer and definitively failed. Spirituality in Caledonia doesn't happen in grand temples with golden statues or stained glass windows. Your gods prefer the outdoors, thank you. Sacred places are circles of standing stones, ancient oak, groves or natural springs. It's like attending a church where the ceiling is always the sky, and the air conditioning is exclusively set to freezing and humid. Druids are intermediaries between your people and the spiritual world, part priests, part judges, part doctors, part counselors. They're the multitasking professionals of antiquity. If today we need a degree for each of these functions, Druids learn everything during decades of oral training. There are no textbooks or multiple-choice exams. Either you memorize thousands of sacred verses or you're not a Druid. Religious ceremonies follow natural cycles, solstices, equinoxes, planting, harvest. Each moment has its own rituals. Imagine planning your religious schedule using not a calendar, but observing when certain plants bloom or when certain migratory birds return. It's like Google Calendar, only based entirely on unpredictable natural phenomena. Animal sacrifices are part of the religious routine. The meat is consumed in communal feasts, while specific parts are offered to the gods. It's an efficient system. The gods get the blood and bones, which aren't useful anyway, while you get the steaks. Convenient, isn't it? Romans do something similar, but with much more pomp and less efficiency. Contrary to Roman propaganda, human sacrifices are extremely rare, reserved for existential community crises. It's like calling the bank manager, only done when all other options have been exhausted. And even then, they're often volunteers who offer themselves believing it will save the tribe. It's technically altruistic suicide with extra steps. The Picts believe the landscape is alive, literally. Every mountain, river, forest has its own spirit that needs to be respected. It's like that animist phase you had at 4 when you thought, your toys had feelings, except here it's an entire sophisticated cosmology shared by functional adults. The division between natural and supernatural worlds is practically non-existent. Weather events, diseases, births, everything has a spiritual dimension. Lightning isn't just an atmospheric electrical discharge. It's a message, divine intervention, an omen. If modern meteorologists functioned like druids, the weather report would be much more dramatic. Amulets and talismans are used constantly. Small herb bags hung around the neck to ward off diseases, symbols engraved in jewelry for protection, strangely shaped stones that supposedly bring luck. It's the ancient equivalent of having a health app on your phone, only with more moss and superstition. Divination is a common practice. Druids read animal entrails, bird flight patterns, cloud movements. Basically anything can become a prediction system with sufficiently creative interpretation. It's like reading horoscopes, only with sheep livers instead of stars. And surprisingly, sometimes it works, mainly because predictions are vague enough to fit any outcome. Pictish mythology is transmitted orally, in stories told around the fire. There are no sacred books or written dogmas. This allows stories to evolve and adapt over time. It's a religious system with automatic updates. The most recent versions of stories incorporate current events, like Roman invasions, into ancient, mythological structures. The dead are treated with extreme respect. Elaborate tombs are built for important leaders with personal objects that will accompany them in the next life. It's essentially like packing for an eternal trip. Clothes, weapons, jewelry, food. Clearly nobody informed the Picts about baggage. Restrictions in the afterlife. Certain natural places are considered portals to the other world, a parallel realm inhabited by supernatural beings. Dark lakes, deep caves, perfectly round hills are treated with special caution. It's like having several Area 51s scattered across the landscape, only instead of aliens, you're worried about fairies and ancestral spirits. Music and dance are central. Elements of religious practices, harps, bone flutes, drums, all used in ceremonies to induce altered states of consciousness. It's basically a prehistoric rave, only with more spiritual meaning and fewer synthetic drugs, though certain psychoactive plants aren't unknown to druids. Unlike Romans, who have gods with specific roles, war, love, agriculture, Pictish deities are more ambiguous and fluid. A goddess can be simultaneously creator and destroyer, nurturer and warrior. It's as if each god were a diversified company, instead of having a single function in the spiritual economy. Interestingly, the Picts are relatively tolerant of foreign deities. New gods can be incorporated into the existing pantheon without major theological dramas. It's open-source polytheism. New divinities can be added as needed. Romans have a similar approach, which makes religion one of the few fields where you could theoretically find common ground if you weren't too busy killing each other. The Picts' political organization would make a modern political scientist scratch their head in confusion. It's not a monarchy, not a democracy, not a dictatorship. It's a fluid system based on a mixture of family lineage, personal ability, wealth, and capacity to not die in battle, a surprisingly important quality for long-term leadership. Your tribe is led by a chief, usually the most capable warrior or most respected member of a prominent family. But don't think it's a dictatorship. The chief needs to consult a council of elders and warriors before making important decisions. It's like a corporate board. Only meetings happen around bonfires and occasionally include ritual sacrifices. Leadership succession isn't strictly hereditary. Yes, being the chief's son helps, but if you're an incompetent coward, nobody will follow you into battle. Savage meritocracy in action. It's like inheriting your father's company, but still needing to prove you won't drive it into bankruptcy in the first quarter. Pictish women have surprisingly progressive rights for the era. They can own property, divorce, fight, and even lead in some circumstances. Some archaeological evidence suggests lineage and inheritance could be matrilineal in certain tribes. It's as if ancient Caledonia was decades ahead on gender issues, while still practicing ritual decapitation. Priorities. Justice is administered publicly by druids and chiefs. There are no prisons. Punishments range from material compensation to victims to exile or execution for serious crimes. It's a surprisingly efficient system when everyone lives in small communities where they know each other by name. Trying. To cheat is difficult when your entire social network consists of the same 150 people you see every day. Wealth is measured mainly in cattle, iron weapons, jewelry, and salt. There are no banks, stock markets, or cryptocurrencies. Your net worth literally moos and grazes on the hills. The concept of inflation exists in the most basic form. A bad year for pasture means thinner cattle, worth less in trades. It's tangible. Economy. You can touch and moo at your investments. The basic social unit is the clan, an extended group of families claiming descent from a common ancestor. Clans form alliances, enter conflicts, exchange members through marriages. It's like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Tinder, combined into a single social institution, only with more spears and fewer likes. The Picts aren't a unified group, but a loose confederation of tribes with similar culture and language. You often fight among yourselves when not fighting Romans. Ironically, Roman invasions are one of the few things that can make rival tribes cooperate. Nothing unites enemies like a bigger, more detestable enemy. Alliances are sealed with marriages, feasts, and gift exchanges. Tribal diplomacy is surprisingly complex, with its own set of protocols and expectations. Refusing hospitality or a gift can start a dispute lasting generations. It's like committing a faux pas at a business dinner, only instead of losing a contract, you start a blood vendetta. Tribal assemblies happen at specific places, usually impressive, natural landmarks or ancient monuments. All free men can speak, though some are heard more than others. It's like a social network where theoretically anyone can post, but only some get significant engagement. Decision-making usually seeks consensus, not simple majority. Discussions can last days until everyone agrees on a course of action. It's slow, but when the decision is finally made, everyone is committed. Compare this to modern democracies where half the population is perpetually angry with every election result. War, surprisingly, follows specific protocols, formal declarations, temporary truces for collecting the dead, respect for certain individuals like druids and messengers. It's like having terms of service for armed conflict. Complicated, frequently ignored, but theoretically binding. Tributes and taxes don't exist as you know them today. Instead of income tax forms and collection guides, you simply give part of your production to the chief, who in turn distributes to those who need it. It's primitive tribal communism, and works surprisingly well on a small scale. There's no public health service, social security, or unemployment insurance. The safety net is your family and tribe. When you're sick, too old to work, or disabled, it's your relatives who take care of you. It's like a retirement plan, where you invest in children instead of stocks, and hope they're not ungrateful. Your workday doesn't start at 9 a.m. or end at 5 p.m. There are no weekends, national holidays, or maternity leave. The concept of work-life balance would be completely alien to a Pict. You work when there's light and when conditions allow, rest when it's dark or the weather is impossible. Dividing tasks by gender is common, though with more flexibility than in Roman society. Men usually hunt, fish, build structures, and wage war. Women typically gather plants, process food, weave textiles, and care for children. But the line is fluid. A woman skilled with a bow can hunt. A man can weave if he has talent for it. Your day might involve working in agricultural fields in the lowlands. The Picts mainly cultivate barley, oats, and rye, hardy grains that tolerate the humid climate and short summers. Plowing the earth with wooden and iron tools is exhausting work. It's like doing CrossFit, only productive and without the monthly gym fee. Hunting is an essential activity, combining food procurement and military training. Deer, wild boar, hares, and wild birds supplement the diet. The tracking, camouflage, and ambush techniques you learn hunting are precisely the same used to ambush Roman patrols. A hobby with transferable curriculum benefits. Fishing occupies much time in coastal and riverside communities. Nets made of plant fibers, wicker traps, and harpoons are used to capture salmon, trout, and other fish. The salmon that swim upriver to spawn are so predictable, you could literally mark on your calendar, if you had one, the day to start fishing season. Metallurgy is a highly valued skill. Blacksmiths work with clay furnaces to transform ore into tools, weapons, and jewelry. The process is almost mystical, surrounded by rituals and trade secrets passed from master to apprentice. It's like a tech startup, only with more real fire and less venture capital. Women often work with food processing, turning grains into flour, milk into cheese, meat into preserved products. Without refrigeration, food preservation is a vital science. Smoking, drying, salting, and fermenting are techniques that keep food edible during the long winters. It's like being a culinary chemist without lab equipment or formal training. Weaving occupies the long winter nights. Sheep wool is washed, carded, spun into threads using hand spindles, and then woven into fabrics on vertical looms. It's a process, taking months, from shearing to finished tunic. Today you complain about 2-day delivery delays on your online order. Your Pictish ancestor spent an entire winter creating a single piece of clothing. Building and maintaining dwellings is constant work. Straw roofs need periodic replacement. Mud and wood walls need repairs after storms. Fortifications need reinforcement. It's like being a property owner today, only with 100 times more maintenance and zero mortgage. Children begin working as soon as they can walk safely. There are no formal schools, daycare centers, or playgrounds. Learning happens through observation and gradual participation in adult activities. A 7-year-old already collects water, helps with animals, and cares for younger siblings. It's hands-on learning in its purest form. Trade occurs mainly through barter. Salt, iron, amber, furs, and captives can be exchanged with other groups for items you can't produce locally. Some Pictish tribes have trade routes extending surprisingly far, connecting to networks reaching the Mediterranean and Baltic. It's like a primitive e-commerce system, Only every transaction requires days of travel and face-to-face negotiations. The elders, even when physically incapable of heavy work, continue contributing with knowledge and specialized skills. They supervise medicine-making, food preservation, complex tool crafting. In a society without books, elderly brains are the tribe's walking encyclopedias. Surprisingly, not every moment is devoted to work. There's space for games, music, stories, and festivities. These activities aren't seen as separate from work, but integrated into community life. A harvest festival is simultaneously a religious celebration, social event, and resource distribution system. You work until there's no more light to see or your body simply can't take anymore. There's no time clock, performance evaluations, or productivity reports. The measure of your success is simple. You and your family survived another day in Caledonia's harsh reality. Congratulations. You've been promoted to still not dead, the only position that really matters. Caledonia's climate deserves its own chapter because it's not just an environmental condition, it's practically an antagonist character in your daily life. If the weather were a co-worker, it would be the one who deliberately sabotages your projects and then smiles innocently. You wake up with rain, work under rain, eat while it rains and go to sleep to the sound of rain beating on the roof. Annual precipitation in some parts of Caledonia can exceed 3,000. For comparison, that's more than many tropical rainforests. You literally live in an environment more humid than the Amazon, only without the pleasant temperatures. Caledonian rain has its own personality. It's not that polite rain that falls vertically. It's aggressive rain, driven by strong winds, that seems determined to find any opening in your clothing. It rains upward, sideways, sometimes seems to rain from all directions simultaneously. It's like being inside a washing machine programmed to the Caledonian cycle. Winter doesn't bring much snow in the lower areas, but compensates with freezing rain, hail, and cutting winds. The mountains are covered in white, creating a dramatic contrast with the dark forests. It's aesthetically impressive if you can appreciate beauty while your fingers are losing feeling from the cold. Summers are surprisingly pleasant for about 3.5 days per year. The rest is a mixture of almost nice if it weren't raining, and at least it's not as cold as winter. Temperatures rarely exceed 20 to go, even on the hottest days. Modern tourists would call this refreshing. You call it the period when you can dry clothes. Wind is a constant presence. Coming from the North Atlantic, it sweeps the highlands with enough force to permanently lean trees. On exposed slopes, vegetation literally grows diagonally, shaped by decades of persistent winds. It's as if the entire landscape is tilted by an invisible force. Fog is so common, it becomes part of the land's identity. It rises from valleys in the morning, envelops mountains in the afternoon, and transforms familiar forests into alien landscapes. It's atmospheric and mysterious, yes, but also incredibly inconvenient when you're trying to hunt, travel, or see anything more than 10 steps away. Storms arise with little warning. The sky can go from moderately cloudy to aquatic apocalypse in minutes. There are no weather apps, only natural signs that the most experienced learn to read: cloud direction, bird behavior, air sensation. It's intuitive meteorology with considerable margin of error. Seasons blend confusingly. You can experience conditions from 3 different seasons in a single day. Snow in June? Happens. Almost tropical day in September? Possible. Hail in the middle of a sunny summer afternoon? Classic Caledonian. The climate here doesn't follow calendars, only its own unpredictable whims. Daylight varies dramatically throughout the year. At summer solstice, twilight extends through the night, creating that phenomenon known as white nights. It never gets completely dark. In contrast, winter solstice offers only a few hours of weak, indirect light. It's as if the sun is making a brief special appearance before fleeing on vacation to the Mediterranean. Coastal areas are regularly hit by maritime storms that hurl saltwater kilometers inland. Coastal erosion is constant, slowly modifying the land's contours. Bays, inlets, and beaches appear and disappear over generations. It's a constant reminder that even solid land is, actually, temporary facing the elements. Swampy areas, which constitute a significant part of the territory, are particularly affected by climate. After intense rains, they become practically impassable, swallowing anyone imprudent enough to try crossing them. Many Romans discovered the hard way that 30 kg armor isn't ideal equipment for swimming in a swamp. Climate shapes not just the terrain, but also you, the Caledonians. Your houses are built to resist the elements, your clothes designed to handle constant humidity, your bodies develop resistance to cold and moisture. Generations of adaptation created a people as resistant as the land itself, which partially explains why Romans, coming from Mediterranean climate, found you so absolutely terrifying. For you, climate isn't something to complain about, though you complain constantly. It's something to be respected, feared, and when possible used as advantage. When a storm arises during battle against Romans, for them it's an inconvenience. For you, it's practically a military ally sent by the gods. It's the climate that makes Caledonia what it is, untamable. For Romans, Pictish technology seems primitive. For you, it's the height of practical innovation. The difference in perspective is like a latest generation smartphone user looking disdainfully at an old Nokia, without realizing that Nokia would work perfectly after being submerged in a swamp. Something that happens with disturbing frequency in your life. Iron is the most advanced technological material available, and you master it with surprising skill. Forges fueled by charcoal reach temperatures high enough to work metal. It's not a Tesla production line, but for the era, it's cutting-edge engineering. The quality of your swords and tools often surprises Romans, who expected to find savages. With wooden clubs, Pictish chariots are particularly notable, light, fast, and adapted for rough terrain. With wooden wheels reinforced with iron and rudimentary suspension systems, essentially flexible leather straps, they can cross fields that would leave heavier Roman chariots completely stuck. It's like comparing an off-road 4x4 with a luxury sedan on a muddy trail. Shipbuilding is another area of expertise. Your coastal vessels, made of wooden planks sewn with plant fibers and sealed with resin, are perfectly adapted for navigating between islands and along the rugged coast. They're light enough to be carried overland when necessary, bypassing obstacles that larger ships would have to avoid. Romans, with their bigger, heavier ships, are at a disadvantage in the shallow, treacherous waters of the Caledonian coast. Pictish textile technology is sophisticated, producing waterproof fabrics treated with natural oils. Your cloak might not look very impressive, but repels water better than many modern synthetic materials. Complex patterns are woven directly into the fabric using techniques requiring years to master. It's precision craftsmanship without machines, the equivalent of manual programming in a world without computers. Building circular fortifications, known as brocks, demonstrates advanced understanding of structural engineering. These dry stone towers built without mortar can reach over 10 meters in height. Double walls with stairs between them create vertical defensive spaces centuries before medieval castles. It's advanced defensive architecture, using only stone, wood, and lots of patience. Your weapons combine simplicity and effectiveness. The IA Carnix, a type of war trumpet with an animal head, is designed to amplify sound and cause panic in enemy lines. It's sonic psychological warfare. Shields are made of light wood with iron edging, balancing protection and mobility. Spears with tips designed to pierce Roman armor show deliberate adaptation to the specific enemy. Food preservation is vital technology in a climate where hunger always lurks. Smoking in specially built huts, controlled fermentation, salting, and drying. Each technique is refined through generations of experimentation. Without electric refrigeration, you've developed methods that allow storing proteins and other nutrients for months. It's pre-industrial food science, Pictish medicinal. Knowledge is extensive based on centuries of careful observation. You use more than 100 different plants for specific treatments. Sphagnum moss as antiseptic wound dressing contains natural iodine compounds. Willow bark decoction for pain contains precursors to acetyl salicylic acid, aspirin's active ingredient, hoof fungus for blood coagulation. It's primitive pharmacology, but surprisingly effective. Your communication systems include smoke signals during day and bonfires at night, allowing messages to travel great distances quickly. An alert can travel hundreds of kilometers in hours, from hill to hill. It's basically Iron Age Twitter, short messages spreading rapidly, often causing widespread panic. Agricultural technology includes wooden plows with iron tips, curved sickles for efficient harvesting, and crop rotation systems that preserve soil fertility. You've built raised fields in swampy areas, creating cultivable soil where none would naturally exist. It's environmental engineering using only hand tools and coordinated work. For navigation, you rely on memorized knowledge of land features, stellar patterns, and maritime currents. Druids maintain this knowledge through mnemonic poems and songs that encode detailed information. There's no GPS or compasses, but you rarely get lost in your own territory. It's like having Google Maps implemented directly in the brain, only limited to a specific region. Metallurgy isn't limited to weapons. Decorative brooches, fibulae, and jewelry show mastery of complex techniques like lost wax casting and granulation. Some Pictish artifacts have details so fine that modern archaeologists need magnifying glasses to fully appreciate them. It's precision craftsmanship done by candlelight, without magnifying glasses or electric tools. The most impressive aspect of Pictish technology isn't any specific tool, but total integration with the local environment. Every innovation is adapted for available materials and Caledonia's specific conditions. It's sustainable, localized technology centuries before these concepts became modern trends, born not from environmental concern, but practical necessity and deep territorial knowledge. Let's talk about something historical documentaries usually ignore: the smell. Specifically, your smell. In ancient Caledonia, the concept of personal hygiene exists, but probably not the way you're accustomed to in the 21st century. If we could time travel and take a sniff, we'd quickly return to the present. Your bathing regime is sporadic. There's no morning shower with hot water, perfumed shampoo and conditioner. At best, you wash in rivers and lakes when weather permits, which in Caledonia means rarely. During winter, the idea of plunging into freezing water seems less hygiene and more suicide attempt. Instead of frequent full baths, you practice a kind of selective cleaning, washing the most obviously dirty parts when necessary. Hands, face, and, hopefully, intimate parts receive priority attention. It's basically the prehistoric equivalent of those wet wipes you use when too tired to shower after the gym. Toothbrushing exists in rudimentary form. Chewed twigs from certain trees like willow, containing compounds similar to salicylic acid, function as primitive brushes. Certain chewed herbs help freshen breath. It's less effective than your electric toothbrush with timer, but surprisingly, many Picts maintain relatively healthy teeth thanks to low-sugar diet. Deodorant consists of herbs rubbed on armpits. Some, like sage, have antibacterial properties that actually help reduce odor. Others serve mainly to mask one smell with another slightly more pleasant one. It's like trying to cover garbage smell with perfume. In the end, you just have perfumed garbage. Hair is washed with a mixture of wood ash and water, creating an alkaline solution that removes grease. It's surprisingly effective, though leaves hair somewhat rough. Some Picts, especially warriors, treat hair with lime to make it stiff and erect, a look that completely sacrifices hair health for tactical intimidation. Women, and some men, use animal fat mixed with herbs as skin moisturizer. It's effective against harsh weather, protecting against wind and cold. The downside is you smell vaguely like a roast with fine herbs. The upside is everyone around you smells similarly, so nobody notices. The concept of clean underwear every day doesn't exist. Your clothes are worn until visibly dirty or stiff enough to stand alone. Washing clothes is a laborious process involving beating pieces on river stones and drying them, or trying to, in wind or near fire. No washing machines, softener or dryers, just tired arms and mediocre results. Lice are frequent companions, as are fleas. It's not that you welcome them gladly. It's just a fact of life, like taxes or software updates. Mutual delousing, removing lice and their eggs from each other's hair, is an important social activity. It's the Pictish equivalent of going out for coffee with friends, only with more parasites being crushed between nails. Toilet paper is, obviously, non-existent. Soft moss, large leaves, running water, discarded wool scraps, all serve the purpose. If this seems uncomfortable, it's because it absolutely is. Dysentery, a common occurrence, makes this reality even more challenging. It's basically a constant emergency situation without Imodium comfort or flush toilets. Hairbrushes are made of boar bristles attached to wooden or horn handles. Combs are carved from bone or wood. These are relatively valuable items that can be passed through generations. Your carved wooden comb is the Pictish equivalent of a modern Dyson hairdryer, a luxury personal care item. Teeth aren't just for chewing. they're tools. You use your teeth to assist in craft work, hold items while your hands are busy, and test material quality. As a result, dental wear is significant. By 40, most people have already lost several teeth. A complete smile in old age is as rare as a friendly Roman. Interestingly, some hygiene practices are linked to religion. Certain rituals require purification through water or smoke. Some sacred places have springs believed to have healing or purifying properties. It's like spa and temple being the same place, combining physical and spiritual cleansing. Despite what Romans say about stinking barbarians, you take considerable care with your appearance. Body paint needs to be applied to reasonably clean skin to adhere properly. Tattoos require care to avoid infections. And before important meetings or rituals, you make special effort to be as presentable as possible, which would still be considered terribly dirty by modern standards. In the end, hygiene is mainly functional. You do enough to avoid obvious diseases and keep your hunter-warrior senses sharp. The concept of smelling good is relative. You smell like smoke, earth, animal fat, plants, and sweat. Essentially, you smell like survival. In a world without deodorant, everyone stinks, so nobody stinks. It's olfactory democracy. Contrary to popular belief, your social life as a Pict doesn't consist only of painting yourself blue and screaming toward Roman legions. There's an entire rich tapestry of social interactions, celebrations, and traditions forming the fabric of Caledonian community, only with more mead and fewer hashtags than modern interactions. Festivals are the center of social life, usually aligned with agricultural and astronomical milestones. Samhain, Halloween's precursor, marks winter's beginning. Beltane celebrates summer's start. Solstices and equinoxes have their own observances. It's like having a holiday calendar composed entirely of combinations between New Year, music festival, and religious ceremony. Mead, beer, and other fermented beverages flow freely during these celebrations. Intoxication isn't just tolerated, but often encouraged as a form of communion with the spiritual world. It's religiously appropriate to get drunk, a justification many modern university students would try to use if they could time travel. Music is essential at any gathering. Harps, bone flutes, skin drums, and horns resonate through the night. There's no Spotify or playlists, only live musicians playing compositions transmitted orally through generations. If you want to hear your favorite music again, you need to make a special request to the bard, the Pictish version of hitting the repeat button. Dance is less structured than later folk dances, but no less enthusiastic. Circular movements, leaps, and gestures that mimic animals or natural phenomena predominate. Imagine a modern rave, only with more ritual meaning and fewer synthetic drugs, though certain plants with psychoactive properties aren't unknown in ceremonial contexts. Community feasts are important events where social status is reaffirmed. Food distribution follows strict hierarchical order, with the best meat cuts going to high-status warriors and leaders. It's like the division between economy and executive class on a flight, only the difference is a better meat cut instead of more legroom. Storytelling is premium entertainment. Professional bards memorize vast repertoires of legends, genealogies, and historical tales. A good story, well told, can keep the entire community captivated for hours. It's Netflix, historical documentary, and family album combined in a live performance. Athletic competitions are popular, testing skills relevant to hunting and war. Spear throwing, running, wrestling, and other tests of strength and agility attract large crowds. Winners gain prestige, material gifts, and often increased romantic attention. It's like being an Olympic athlete. Only medals are replaced by practical items like new axes. Courtship is surprisingly complex. It involves skill demonstration, family negotiations, and testing periods. The woman's consent is usually necessary, and she has significant power in choosing partners. Marriages are alliances between families as much as unions between individuals. Part business contract, part romance. Hospitality is sacred. Refusing food or shelter to a traveler is considered deeply dishonorable. On the other hand, abusing a host's hospitality is equally condemnable. It's a reciprocity system that works without rating apps. Your reputation as host or guest spreads through organic social networks, literally word of mouth. Board games exist, usually involving abstract military strategy. Stone, glass, or bone pieces move in patterns on carved boards. Some are surprisingly sophisticated, requiring advanced tactical thinking. It's like chess, only with rules. Nobody from the future will be able to completely decipher. The art of conversation is highly valued. Eloquence is seen as an indicator of intelligence and character. Formal debates occur during tribal assemblies, with specific rules of expression. It's politics, as spectator sport, centuries before televised debates. Elaborate poetic insults are particularly appreciated. It's basically primitive rap battle. Respect for elders is fundamental. They're walking repositories of knowledge in a culture without writing. An elderly person might remember remedies for rare diseases, treaties with distant tribes, or survival techniques for extreme weather conditions that occur only once per generation. It's like having living Wikipedia, only with arthritis and tendency to repeat stories. Children are raised communally. Though biological parents have primary responsibility, the entire tribe participates in education and socialization. Children learn by observing adults and gradually participating in increasingly complex activities. There are no formal schools, only constant hands-on learning. It's homeschooling at tribal level. Clan loyalty supersedes almost all other considerations. Blood feuds can last generations, with each new insult or injury being carefully recorded in collective memory. At the same time, alliances between clans are sealed through marriages, exchange of noble hostages, treated very well, and solemn oaths. It's international politics on microscale. Gossip is an important form of social control. In a small community without police or prisons, reputation is everything. Behaviors that harm the group are punished first with public shame and ostracism, escalating to banishment only in extreme cases. It's like social media before the internet. Your reputation follows you, and there are no alternate profiles to start over. The Picts aren't a unified group, but a loose confederation of tribes with similar culture and language. You often fight among yourselves when not fighting Romans. Ironically, Roman invasions are one of the few things that can make rival tribes cooperate. Nothing unites enemies like a bigger, more detestable enemy. Alliances are sealed with marriages, feasts, and gift exchanges. Tribal diplomacy is surprisingly complex, with its own set of protocols and expectations. Refusing hospitality or a gift can initiate a dispute lasting generations. It's like committing a faux pas at a business dinner, only instead of losing a contract, you start a blood vendetta. Tribal assemblies happen at specific locations, usually impressive natural landmarks or ancient monuments. All free men can speak, though some are heard more than others. It's like a social network where theoretically anyone can post, but only some achieve significant engagement. Decision-making usually seeks consensus, not simple majority. Discussions can last days until everyone agrees on a course of action. It's slow, but when the decision is finally made, everyone is committed. Compare this to modern democracies where half the population is perpetually angry with every election result. War, surprisingly, follows specific protocols. Formal declarations, temporary truces for collecting the dead, respect for certain individuals like druids and messengers. It's like having terms of service for armed conflict, complicated, frequently ignored, but theoretically binding. Tributes and taxes don't exist as you know today. Instead of income tax forms and collection guides, you simply give part of your production to the chief, who in turn distributes to those who need it. It's primitive tribal communism, and works surprisingly well on small scale. There's no public health service, social security, or unemployment insurance. The safety net is your family and tribe. When you're sick, too old to work, or disabled, it's your relatives who care for you. It's like a retirement plan, where you invest in children instead of stocks, and hope they're not ungrateful. Your education as a Pictish child didn't involve desks, textbooks, or homework. From the moment you could walk confidently, your curriculum became the world around you and your teachers. Literally all the adults in the community. At 3 years old, you were already helping collect small firewood. At 5, you knew dozens of edible and poisonous plants. At 7, you could help drive cattle and actively participated in fishing. At 10, you already knew how to use a knife, build traps, and follow forest trails. Compared to modern children, who can barely make a sandwich at 12, you were practically a survival expert before even reaching puberty. There's no protected, isolated childhood from the adult world. You observe births, deaths, sex, violence, and the entire spectrum of human experience from early on. There are no sanitized versions of reality or conversations for when you're older. Life is raw, direct, and shared in all its manifestations. It's like growing up without parental content control in a world where all content is extremely graphic. Learning is totally practical. Nobody gives you a lecture on how to make a basket. You observe, try, fail, receive harsh corrections, and try again, repeatedly. It's the learn by doing method taken to the extreme. Modern children complain about demanding teachers. You had to satisfy standards of craftsmen whose lives literally depended on the quality of their work. Stories aren't just entertainment, but sophisticated educational tools. Legends and folk. Tales contain coded information about navigation, weather, medicinal plants, and dangers. It's as if your favorite cartoons secretly taught advanced aerospace engineering. There's no clear distinction between playing and working. Your childhood games, chasing each other, hiding, building miniature shelters, are simplified versions of adult hunting, war, and construction skills. Play is the original gamified learning, thousands of years before educational apps. Rites of passage mark important developmental transitions. First hunt, first battle, first time participating in certain religious rituals, all carefully structured to mark your gradual incorporation into the adult world. There's no clear line like, now you're an adult. Instead, you gradually accumulate responsibilities and privileges. Memory is intensively trained. Without books or written records, you need to memorize extensive genealogies, tribal history, agreements with other clans, properties of hundreds of plants, animal migration patterns, and much more. Your brain isn't just for thinking, it's your personal hard drive, library, and GPS combined. Genders are less rigidly defined than in contemporary classical societies. Boys learn basic feminine skills like weaving and food preparation. Girls learn to hunt and fight. Though gender-based specialization still exists, there's pragmatic flexibility. It's less, this is man's woman's work, and more, everyone needs to know a bit of everything for when necessity arises. Discipline is communal. Any adult can correct any child, often directly and physically. There's no, wait until your father gets home. Correction is immediate and comes from all directions. The positive side is that praise and recognition also come from the entire community. It's like having dozens of parental figures simultaneously, terrifying and comforting at the same time. Self-directed play in mixed-age groups is central to development. Older children teach younger ones, test limits together, and develop complex social skills without constant adult supervision. This unstructured time is crucial for learning social hierarchy, conflict resolution, and cooperation. It's Lord of the Owl, flies, only usually without reaching murder. Interestingly, Pictish children probably experienced more autonomy than their modern equivalents. From early on, they could wander freely around the village and surroundings, make consequential decisions, and contribute significantly to family survival. With this freedom came very real responsibility. Their mistakes could cost precious resources or even lives. Knowledge is transmitted through songs, rhythmic stories, and elaborate mnemonics. Vital information is encoded in forms the human brain naturally retains: melody, rhythm, rhyme, vivid images. It's as if your textbook were also a playlist, with each important concept having its own memorable music. Children learn early to read the landscape, not books, but the sky for weather prediction, tracks for hunting, vegetation patterns for water location. You develop an incredibly detailed mental map of the territory, noticing small changes that would be invisible to untrained eyes. It's like having Google Maps, weather radar, and animal tracking app all stored in the brain. Respect for elders is non-negotiable, but this doesn't mean passivity. Children are encouraged to question as long as they do so respectfully and at the appropriate time. Curiosity is valued, especially when directed toward practical skills. Why is the sky blue? Might get a mythological answer, but why do we tie the axe this way? Will receive detailed technical explanation. In the end, your Pictish education is holistic in a way modern educational systems can only dream of achieving. It perfectly integrates physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual development. There's no separation between school and real life. The result? By 15, you're already practically a functional adult, capable of surviving independently, if necessary. Something that could hardly be said of a contemporary teenager abandoned in the same Caledonian landscape. Your first encounter with a Roman probably wasn't under pleasant social circumstances. There were no business card exchanges or polite conversations about weather, though Romans certainly would have much to say about Caledonian weather. Instead, it was more likely the glimpse of shining helmets marching through the valley, the rhythmic sound of thousands of sandals beating the soaked ground, the gleam of ornate standards carrying the imperial eagle. To you, Romans are a complete anomaly. They march in rigid formations, as if they were a single creature with thousands of legs. They build straight roads through landscapes that obviously call for winding paths. They erect square forts in lands where everything is naturally curved. It's as if they're determined to impose straight lines on a world that clearly prefers spirals. Roman equipment is simultaneously impressive and laughable to your eyes. Their shining armor is beautiful, but heavy and noisy, perfect for announcing your location to every Pictish ambush. Their rectangular shields work well in formation, but are clumsy in dense forests. It's like watching someone trying to navigate a narrow maze carrying a door. Communication is an interesting challenge. Some Romans have learned basic words of the British language, and some Picts have captured fragments of Latin. Translators exist, usually slaves or merchants who navigate between worlds, but misunderstandings are constant. It's like playing telephone, only the result can be war instead of laughter. Romans have a peculiarly binary view of the world. There's Rome and there's barbarism. They look at your elaborate tattoos, lime-treated hair and body paintings and see only savagery, completely unable to recognize the cultural sophistication and environmental adaptation these customs represent. It's like a Windows user looking at a Mac and declaring it's not a real computer because the buttons are in different places. The Roman reaction to Caledonian terrain is particularly comical to you. They seem personally offended by swamps, indignant at mountains, and completely betrayed by weather. You watch them trying to drain swamps that immediately fill again, cut forests quickly reclaimed by vegetation, and build structures that slowly sink into wet soil. It's like watching someone try to sweep the ocean. Food is another point of cultural shock. Romans brought their Mediterranean diet, olive oil, wine, wheat bread, to a place where olive trees would die of depression in a week. Meanwhile, they look with horror at your diet of game meat, fish, hearty cereals, and local vegetables. It's the ancient equivalent of someone trying to find a Starbucks in the middle of the Himalayas and complaining that locals only offer yak butter tea. Roman military tactics are predictable to you. They depend on order, discipline, and numerical superiority, always seeking the decisive pitched battle that never comes. As Picts, you respond with ambushes, night attacks, and using terrain as a weapon. It's like a chess match where one side strictly follows rules while the other uses the board to hit the opponent's head. The Roman concept of conquest is particularly strange to your mentality. They don't just want to defeat you militarily, they want you to become Romans. Roads, baths, planned towns, taxes, written laws, an entire civilizational package that seems completely disconnected from Caledonian reality. It's like someone offering a microwave instruction manual to a people who don't have electricity. Romans consider your resistance as primitive stubbornness, unable to comprehend that you're not rejecting civilization, but defending a way of life perfectly adapted to Caledonia's challenging environment. To you, Roman comforts seem fragile and dependent on vulnerable supply lines. It's like rejecting a latest generation smartphone when you live somewhere without network or electricity. Interestingly, some trade occurs at the borders, even during periods of active conflict. Salt, wine, pottery, and Roman metals are exchanged for furs, amber, hunting dogs, and slaves captured from other tribes. It's like the Cold War with demilitarized zones where some trade still happened, enemies on the battlefield, but reluctant trading partners when convenient. What really confuses Romans is how you simply disappear. They make camp, and the landscape seems deserted. Then, the next morning, they discover they've lost 5 centuries and all their digging tools. You're everywhere and nowhere. It's like fighting ghosts who occasionally steal your boots. Roman administration never fully understands that Caledonia isn't just a place. It's a life system, a symbiotic relationship between people, cultural knowledge, and environment. Their massive defensive walls, Hadrian and later Antonine, are physical expressions of this incomprehension. They try to draw a line on Earth separating Roman from barbarian, completely oblivious that such divisions are meaningful only to them. To Romans, you're a frustrating enigma, a people without cities to conquer, without formal armies to defeat, without power centers to occupy. Victory against the Picts is like trying to hold water with your hands. Seems briefly possible, only to slip through fingers. It's the logistical and strategic nightmare of any occupation force. How do you defeat an enemy who refuses to play by your rules? In the end, the Roman Empire, which conquered 3 continents and bent countless peoples to its will, simply gives up. The walls that originally marked the temporary northern expansion limit become permanent admission of failure. Caledonia remains untamed not because you were stronger, but because the cost of subjugating you exceeded any possible benefit. It's perhaps the Picts' greatest victory, forcing antiquity's greatest superpower to make a cost-benefit calculation and decide you simply weren't worth the effort. Not with a climactic final battle, but with the imperial Roman equivalent of an exasperated sigh and grumbling retreat. Pictish art stands out for its intricate abstract patterns, spirals, intertwined, curves, complex geometric shapes. To modern eyes, it resembles later Celtic design somewhat, but with a more primordial and mysterious quality. It's as if M.C. Escher had been born in the Iron Age and had access only to stone and metal, the so-called Pictish stones. Large, stone slabs carved with enigmatic symbols are one of your culture's most enduring legacies. Some contain what appears to be a form of writing, still not fully deciphered. Future archaeologists will spend entire careers debating their meaning, without realizing some are essentially the Pictish equivalent of "Kilroy was here" or "Marcus loves Brina." Pictish jewelry shows remarkable technical sophistication. Brooches, fibulae and fasteners made of bronze, silver, and occasionally gold demonstrate mastery of techniques like lost wax casting and granulation. Designs often incorporate stylized animals, wolves, eagles, boars, portrayed with an almost abstract but immediately recognizable quality. It's like a modern corporate logo, but with religious instead of capitalist purpose. Weapons aren't just tools, but works of art and status symbol. Sword hilts are decorated with amber and bronze, shields painted with personal and tribal symbols. Even functional objects like knives and axes often feature careful ornamentation. It's as if every tool was simultaneously a practical item and artistic expression. Pictish pottery is surprisingly sophisticated, with distinct forms for different uses. It's not as standardized as Roman pottery, but shows considerable skill in using coiling techniques and applying stamped or incised decoration. The lack of potter's wheels doesn't prevent creating functional and aesthetically pleasing vessels. It's manual craftsmanship in a pre-industrial world. Textiles, rarely preserved archaeologically, would be one of the most impressive art forms. Plaid patterns, tartan precursors, sophisticated dyeing techniques and complex weaving create vibrant, distinctive fabrics. Artistic expression through clothing is an important non-verbal communication form, indicating status, tribal affiliation, and even spiritual beliefs. It's fashion as visual language. The circular huts aren't just functional shelters, but expressions of cosmological understanding. The circular form reflects belief in natural cycles. The central post supporting the conical roof symbolically connects earth and sky. It's architecture with dual purpose, practical and metaphysical, each house reaffirming Pictish worldview through its own structure. The leather-sewn boats, currach, are masterpieces of functional design. Made of wooden frames covered with treated, waterproofed oxides, they're surprisingly effective for coastal and river navigation. Light enough to be carried overland when necessary, these boats allow mobility in a landscape of rivers, lakes, and indented coasts. It's perfect reverse engineering for the environment. Music, though leaving no direct archaeological traces, is a fundamental art form. Harps, bone flutes, skin drums, carnyx-type trumpets with animal heads, the ensemble would create a unique soundscape. Without musical notation, each performance is unique, with traditional themes reinterpreted by each musician. It's like prehistoric jazz, structured but improvised. Daily work tools show an economy of design that is art in itself. Perfectly curved sickles for efficient harvesting, balanced hammers that maximize impact force while minimizing effort, baskets woven so densely they can carry water. It's industrial design centuries before industrialization, where form follows. Function with intuitive elegance. For navigation, You rely on memorized knowledge of land features, stellar patterns, and maritime currents. Druids maintain this knowledge through mnemonic poems and songs that encode detailed information. There's no GPS or compasses, but you rarely get lost in your own territory. It's like having Google Maps implemented directly in the brain, only limited to a specific region. Metallurgy isn't limited to weapons. Decorative brooches, fibulae, and jewelry show mastery of complex techniques like lost wax casting and granulation. Some Pictish artifacts have details so fine that modern archaeologists need magnifying glasses to fully appreciate them. It's precision, craftsmanship done by candlelight, without magnifying glasses or electric tools. Preservation techniques are sophisticated and culturally distinct. Smokers for meat and fish, fermentation containers for dairy products, grain storage methods that resist omnipresent humidity, all developed through generational experimentation. It's empirical food science, resulting in unique flavors and preparations that define ritual structure. Stone circle, burial, ceremonial pits represent substantial investments of community time and effort, indicating the centrality of spiritual expression. Precise, astronomical alignments in some of these monuments demonstrate sophisticated knowledge of celestial cycles. It's practical astronomy without telescopes, written calendars, or mathematical equations. Temporary, painting, and permanent, tattoo. Body art constitutes a living gallery of cultural expression. Designs aren't random, but encode information about status, achievements, tribal affiliation, and possibly spiritual beliefs. It's like a resume, identity and statement of faith combined, all written directly on the skin. Settlement locations show astute adaptation to environment. Hill settlements for defense and drainage, orientation to maximize sunlight and minimize exposure to prevailing wind, calculated proximity to essential resources like water and wood. It's intuitive urban planning, responding to environmental realities instead of imposing artificial grids on landscape. Pictish material culture, ultimately, represents a sophisticated expression of identity in a world of limited resources. Each object carries multiple layers of meaning: practical, aesthetic, social, and spiritual. It's minimalism, not by philosophical choice, but pragmatic necessity, finding creative expression within severe material constraints. Death in Caledonia isn't a distant, sanitized, institutionalized event like in modern society. It's a constant presence, a familiar neighbor who can knock on your door at any moment. With life expectancy between 25-35 years, each person has already lost close family members and friends several times before even reaching adulthood. Funeral rituals vary among tribes, but share common elements. The body might be cremated in elaborate pyres or buried in fetal position, as if returning to Earth's womb. Some graves contain only clean bones, suggesting preliminary body exposure, perhaps on elevated platforms where scavenger birds could clean the remains. It's like offering the physical body back to nature, piece by piece. Personal belongings often accompany the deceased: weapons, jewelry, tools, containers with food and drink. It's not waste, but spiritual investment. These items are needed in the next life or journey. It's essentially packing for the dead, preparing them for the greatest trip they'll ever take. Important figures receive impressive monuments: circular tombs surrounded by stones, prominent burial mounds in the landscape, or burials under monumental, carved stones. These structures serve as territorial landmarks as much as memorials, claiming land through ancestors' continuing presence. It's post-death real estate with political purpose. Mourning is expressive and communal. Funeral chants, ritualized lamentations, and celebrations of the deceased's life combine genuine emotional expression with culturally coded performances. The living have specific responsibilities to the dead, and neglecting these duties can result in supernatural consequences. It's primitive group therapy, mixed with social obligation. Belief in the afterlife varies, but generally involves some form of otherworld or continued existence. This realm might be reached through specific landscape passages. Certain lakes, caves, or hills are seen as portals. The boundary between worlds is more permeable at certain times of year, particularly Samhain, late October, early November, when the dead can briefly visit the living. It's like having a calendar for interdimensional visits. Ancestors aren't truly absent, but transformed into spiritual presences that can influence living affairs. Regular offerings at specific places, food, drink, valuable objects, maintain reciprocal relationships with the dead. It's like paying spiritual alimony, keeping ancestors satisfied so they continue providing protection and guidance. Death in battle is viewed differently from death by disease or old age. Fallen warriors may enjoy special status in the afterlife. Similar to the later Norse concept of Valhalla, this doesn't glorify death itself, but recognizes sacrifice in defending community. It's basically a post-death benefit plan for employees who die in service. Certain deaths are problematic. Those who die in bad ways, or at inauspicious times, might become restless spirits. Special practices deal with these cases. Weights on the body, burial in remote locations, specific rituals to bind the spirit. It's supernatural risk management, treating anomalous deaths as potential hazards requiring mitigation. Druids serve as intermediaries between living and dead, interpreting dreams and omens as communications from beyond. They also conduct rituals that renew connections with distant ancestors, maintaining tribal identity continuity across generations. It's like an interdimensional messaging service operated by religious specialists. The physical body isn't seen as a disposable shell, but as something that must be treated with respect even after death. Defiling remains or tombs is considered not just offensive to the living, but dangerous, potentially attracting the dead's wrath. This is why Picts occasionally dig up and decapitate dead Roman enemies, not from gratuitous cruelty, but to prevent them from properly returning to their own afterlife. Interestingly, the dead continue to participate in important tribal events. Ceremonies are held at burial sites. Important decisions may be consulted with ancestors through divinatory rites, and new leaders receive legitimacy by connecting with deceased predecessors. It's like having an advisory council composed entirely of dead relatives. Death isn't seen as the person's end, but as a transformation of status and form. The deceased continues as part of the community, less visible and tangible, but still present and influential. This view contrasts sharply with the more legalistic, formalized Roman concept of death as definitive termination of legal personality. It's a fundamental ontological difference, what it means to exist as a person. The idea of good death is important, ideally surrounded by family, having put affairs in order, with time to transmit final knowledge and say goodbye. Sudden or isolated death is feared not just for physical suffering, but for spiritual danger of inadequate transition. It's like preferring planned retirement to sudden dismissal. The transition matters as much as the destination. Memorialization continues for generations through oral narratives. Stories about the dead, especially those who performed notable deeds or possessed exceptional skills, are repeated at tribal gatherings, keeping their memory alive long after their passing. It's the Pictish equivalent of having a building named in your honor, or a Wikipedia page. Immortality through collective remembrance. You don't know this while fighting to maintain your independence from Imperial Rome, but your successful resistance has established a precedent that will echo through centuries. The Scotland that will eventually emerge from this territory will maintain a fierce spirit of self-determination that will challenge future empires, whether Roman, Viking, Anglo-Saxon, or English. The symbols and patterns you paint on your body and carve in stone will survive, transformed but recognizable in jewelry, illuminated books, and eventually in the modern Celtic aesthetic that will adorn everything from contemporary tattoos to tourist t-shirts. Your abstract, interlaced designs will be admired for their mathematical sophistication and timeless beauty long after their original context is forgotten. The landscape you know intimately will be romanticized by future generations. The same misty mountains that serve as your natural shield will become the setting for romances, films, and television shows. Tourists will travel thousands of kilometers to experience what you consider unbearable daily weather, calling it atmospheric and mystical. The story of your resistance will be simplified and mythologized. Novels, films, and documentaries will tell dramatized versions of the Pictish struggle, often with glaring historical inaccuracies but emotionally resonant themes. Your people will be simultaneously idealized as noble savages and misrepresented as simple barbarians painted blue screaming on hills. Ironically, much of what we know about you will come from the writings of your enemies. Roman historians like Tacitus recorded observations about the Caledonians, often with bias, but preserving details that would otherwise have been lost. It's as if your biography were written exclusively by your annoying neighbor. technically informative, but lacking nuance and sympathy. The language you speak, an ancient British idiom, will evolve and change, eventually giving way to Gaelic and English. Words that form your daily vocabulary will survive mainly in place names, rivers, mountains, regions, their original meanings obscured but still present as linguistic fossils on modern maps. Your direct descendants will continue occupying the same lands, though mixed with successive waves of newcomers, remaining Romans, Britons, Gaels, Norse, Normans, and others. Pictish DNA will flow through generations, invisible but present, carrying fragments of your biological legacy into the future. You will literally be in modern Scotland's blood. Your ecological knowledge, built over generations of careful observation and experimentation, will be partially lost in subsequent cultural transitions. Centuries later, scientists will rediscover principles you understood intuitively about local ecosystems and sustainable practices. It's like writing a book that's ignored for generations, only to be discovered and acclaimed as revolutionary. The festivities you celebrate, Samhain, Beltane, solstices, and equinoxes, will survive in altered forms, some absorbed by Christian traditions, others revived in modern interpretations. Halloween, spring festivals, solstice celebrations, all carry distant echoes of rituals that are central to your spiritual calendar. Your warfare techniques, ambushes, guerrilla tactics, terrain use, will become a model for future resistance movements. The same approach you use against Rome will be employed by your descendants against subsequent empires, always adapting to circumstances, but maintaining the central principle. Knowing the terrain is the greatest advantage. The Picts' reputation as fierce warriors will crystallize in popular imagination. Even after your specific people have been absorbed into larger political entities, the image of the Caledonian Pictish warrior will remain as a symbol of indomitable resistance. Future Scottish armies will go into battle evoking the spirit of their Pictish ancestors. The carved stones you leave behind will become precious archaeological artifacts, studied and debated by specialists trying to decipher their meanings. Complex theories will be developed about symbols that, to you, are part of everyday visual vocabulary. It's as if your social media posts were analyzed by scholars 2 millennia later, seeking deep meanings in your memes. The Scottish identity that eventually emerges will incorporate significant elements of Pictish legacy, even when mixed with later influences. The thistle symbol, the tradition of clan patterns, certain musical instruments, all will carry echoes of your culture, transformed but recognizable, like a familiar melody played on a different instrument. Interestingly, blue, the color with which you paint your body for battle, will become one of future Scotland's national colors, though probably by coincidence rather than direct continuity. The Scottish flag will feature a white cross on blue background, evoking, inadvertently, the image of Pictish warriors with white symbols painted over blue-dyed skin. Your experience with Roman imperialism will inform future Scotland's stance toward external powers. A deep distrust of foreign domination, an intense value on self-determination, and a tendency to form strategic alliances against common threats. All these aspects of Scottish politics will echo the formative experience of Caledonian resistance against Rome. Whiskey, which will become internationally famous as a Scottish product, has roots possibly extending to your primitive fermentation and distillation techniques. The word whiskey comes from Gaelic uisge beatha, or water of life, a concept that would have resonated with your own understanding of the sacred properties of certain fermented beverages. Though you can't imagine it, your successful resistance to Romanization means Caledonia, Scotland will follow a distinct cultural development path from the rest of Britain. Centuries later, this difference will be expressed in separate legal structures, distinct educational traditions, and a sense of national identity that will persist even when politically united with England. The very landscape you consider normal, everyday home, the rugged mountains, deep lakes, indented coasts, will become iconic, represented in countless paintings, photographs, and films. Places you pass daily will become tourist destinations, with people traveling globally to experience the magic of the Scottish Highlands. In the end, perhaps your most enduring legacy is the example of adaptive determination. Facing your era's greatest imperial power, You didn't win through brute force or technological superiority, but through adaptation, perseverance, and refusal to accept defeat. This spirit, more than any physical artifact or surviving gene, is what truly survives, emerging at critical moments in later Scottish history. In a twist of history, you would find simultaneously satisfying and ironic. The Roman Empire, which failed to conquer your land, will eventually fall, while aspects of your culture will survive, transformed but recognizable in the peoples who will continue to call Caledonia home for thousands of years after the last legion has departed. As you sit by the fire in your circular hut, watching shadows dance on stone walls, you have no idea how your daily resistance is shaping history's course. How could you? To you, this isn't history. It's just life, the only one you know, with its constant hardships and small joys. You don't know you'll be remembered, often misunderstood, frequently romanticized, occasionally demonized, but never forgotten. You don't know future generations will find in the stones you carve, the stories you tell, the battles you fight, something that resonates beyond time, the unshakable determination to remain free. The land you fight for isn't just territory, it's identity. Every hill, river, forest, and coast is woven into the tapestry of who your people are. In an era of empires and fluid borders, you already understand instinctively what modern nations still struggle to articulate, that place and person are inextricably intertwined, that defending one is preserving the other. There's deep wisdom in your apparent barbaric stubbornness that Rome never fully comprehended. Your resistance isn't mere primitive obstinacy, but a sophisticated understanding of cultural and environmental sustainability. You know, without needing to theorize academically, that life in Caledonia requires forms of social organization, economic practices, and cultural adaptations that the Roman model simply cannot accommodate. What Romans see as your failure to civilize is actually your refusal to adopt systems that wouldn't work in your context. Roman roads would sink in swamps. Roman towns would be unsustainable in mountainous areas. Roman agriculture would quickly exhaust fragile soils. Your barbarism is, in many aspects, a more sophisticated form of environmental adaptation than Roman progress. Perhaps most surprising is that, although Rome brought writing, monumental architecture, and advanced technology to many parts of Europe, Caledonia will develop these things at its own pace, on its own terms. The absence of Roman conquest won't result in perpetual cultural stagnation, as imperialists might predict, but in an alternative development path that will eventually converge and diverge from continental European in fascinating ways. The final irony is that Rome, with all its grandeur, power, and ambition, is now historical dust. The empire fell, its language became academic, its gods are studied as mythology. Meanwhile, the land they couldn't conquer remains vibrant, inhabited, culturally distinct. Caledonia, in its modern incarnation as Scotland, still exists as a recognizable entity, still with its distinctive identity, still occasionally at odds with greater powers to the south. Rome failed to understand that some things cannot be conquered by force, not because they're physically impenetrable, but because their value lies precisely in their untamable nature. Caledonia, with its misty mountains, mysterious stories, resilient peoples, is one of those things. You, anonymous Picty, living your harsh life in the Caledonian hills, aren't just a historical curiosity or footnote in the grand narrative of the Roman Empire. You're living proof that even the most powerful empires find their limits not just in walls or oceans, but in the unshakable will of peoples determined to remain true to themselves and their land. When Romans finally retreat behind their walls, leaving Caledonia to its native inhabitants, they'll carry with them stories of a fierce, incomprehensible people who preferred living in cold, rainy huts to enjoying the comforts of civilization. What they won't understand, and what historians still struggle to fully articulate, is that your resistance wasn't a primitive rejection of progress, but a sophisticated affirmation of a way of life perfectly adapted to your unique environment. And so, as you add more peat to the fire and prepare for another cold night in your circular hut, know that you're not just a survivor in a harsh land. You're the guardian of something that will last much longer than the empire threatening your way of life. You are Caledonian, Pict, ancestor of Scotland. And though Rome may control much of the known world, there's a small portion of the map that will remain forever beyond their reach, marked on imperial records with a single resigned phrase, "Here dwell the Picts." So there, what would you have done in the Romans' place? Would you have given up or continued this endless war? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with those who also love history.